All right, hello everyone, and happy Tuesday to you. It's the feast day of St. John Chrysostom, an excellent, apologist and teacher of the Catholic Church. So it's a good day to wrap this up. Um, this is going to be my last video for summarizing Star Trek Lives! Exclamation point. We're going to cover Chapter 6 today, the goal effect. There are 3 chapters after this one, and they're not really the sort of thing that's worthy of these video series. So this will be my last one, and I'm going to move on to other stuff after this. And the reason I'm doing it today is getting up and getting in the car today, I foolishly grabbed this book, which was next to the book I'm actually reading. I get to the church about an hour and 15 minutes before Mass to say my prayers and just kind of get in the right state. And now that I don't have the book I was going to read, I have a little extra time today, and I decided that that was a sign that God just wants me to finish the series. So, here I am at St. Matthew's Catholic Church with the Robertos behind me. That's for a very specific intention. It's going to come up in near the end of the video. So, let's wrap this up. The goal effect. Again, one of the good things that Star Trek offered was, the pursuit of goals. And I mostly agree with this chapter. Life is like that. Life is not like that. The anti-Rosalies of this world belong to us all. They're the people who, when we first respond to some heroic vision of the world suitable for a young mind, say that with crushing superiority, wait till you grow up, you'll see, that's all foolishness. People are not like that. Life is not like that. And most of us don't know at that age to question, the question that we ought to ask is, should life be like that? So I liked how this chapter began, because I've had my Auntie Rosalies talk about the Bible in that way. Life is not like that. Well, okay, that's one factor. Anyway, what we want is the vision of man as heroic as man could and should be, that the world should be as it should be. But we all too often listen to our Auntie Rosalies, and we are nagged by the doubt that our heroes cannot exist. We soon began to run into a kind of art that says that we don't or can't be heroes. Heroes are not real, but villains are. Cowards and weaklings, and the confused, the hopeless, and the purposeless, and the goalless. All of that exists, but heroes do not exist. And of course, Star Trek argues against that. And I very, very dearly love Star Trek for that. So skipping ahead right here, I do like this idea. This also has been something that's been in my mind for quite some time. The prevailing mainstream theory of art has been naturalism, the idea of things as they are. That has gone from bad to worse until it now portrays mostly horrors and hopelessness. Critics have been taught to praise it, but it is questionable whether they even like it. And what people overwhelmingly do like and turn to for enjoyment is anything which has traces of romantic art. And what they love is real romantic art of the best kind. The reason for that love is to be found in one of the most important functions of art, that is, choosing goals and working to attain them. I love that. I love that the art that really moves us is the stuff that's not really talking about exactly how the world is, but how we would like the world to be. That's what makes it romantic art. And I, for one, really appreciate that. I would always roll my eyes when people would say they like Game of Thrones because that's the way the world really works. And I actually have quite a few counter arguments to that one. But my main argument, if I had to pick one, I would say, no, I don't like a Game of Thrones, because if the world is like that, it should not be like that. The good people of this world, we should do everything in our power to keep that reality from unfolding. So yay for romantic art. So one thing that Gene Roddenberry said, I like this part again. I don't agree with everything Gene Roddenberry says. I like him here though. He was asked about the function of art. I think it answers the question why. Why go on? The function of art to me is to give answers. It is less to give raw courage than to give reasons for raw courage. Well said, Gene. Well said. I am going to skip a lot of this chapter. A lot of it comes down to how the goal effect applied on the set and all that. We're not going to get into that today. One thing that I didn't appreciate here, I'm going to get into a little bit of this later on as well. The first thing he mentions here, I'm all the way on page 136, about at least halfway through the chapter, that life is exciting and the unknown is to be joyfully conquered. I underline that because I disagreed with that. Life is exciting. I would argue that the unknown can never be truly joyfully conquered. Conquering the unknown is one of many possibilities. And in the Catholic faith, when we talk about the mystery of faith, the mystery of God himself, we're not talking about something we haven't mastered yet. We're talking about something that is beyond our ability to completely understand. Like we can get the basics, like we can get close to it, but it is ultimately beyond us, and therefore, when you are in the presence of the mystery, the goal is not to conquer the mystery, the goal is to be experiencing the mystery. So that's one little nitpick I'll give to the Star Trek mythos, because in Star Trek, of course, all mystery is solvable. That's part of what the show is about. I would argue actual reality is just a little more complicated than that. And right here, here's the reason I wanted to rear this in the background today. The creators of Star Trek were deeply aware, of course, that there are many ills in our society. Thus, Star Trek could have focused on this and sculpted its figures as the artists of the Middle Ages sculpted man in stone, as a deformed monstrosity symbolizing tortures, ugliness, fear, and pessimism as man's natural proper state. The medieval sculptors were, of course, aware that many men were godlike, strong, beautiful, efficacious, but they considered these conditions an accidental and irrelevant to man's essential nature. I actually wrote there in the little margins, no, incorrect. Flatly disagree with that. I think we, modern people, with our Starbucks, we pick on our medieval ancestors way too much. I think we vilify them as bad people and people that were wrong because they happen to be living in one of the hardest periods of human life in terms of Western civilization, at least. I actually disagree that the predominant idea of medieval thinking is that we should represent man with torture, ugliness, fear, and pessimism. Now, torture, ugliness, fear, and pessimism absolutely existed in the Middle Age. It was a very dark time. Some of it was natural, and some of it was very sadly man-made, and some of it perpetuated by the church. Life is complicated. Everybody had their share of guilt. But if you read the saints from that era, it is obvious to me that medieval thinking also was able to recognize the glory and beauty and everyday dignity of human life. If you took a medieval person and brought him into our time, if you could possibly, acclimate him to modern life, that sounds like a really hard thing to do. I actually think Star Trek would be actually one of the easier things a medieval mind could comprehend. Again, this goal effect, this optimism effect, I do not believe that medieval man was so hopeless as that. When we look at Catholic statuary, this is not symbolizing ugliness, torture, or pessimism. these are the figures of our past, and they're not God. We're not worshiping them, but we remember them as larger than life. We look to them for inspiration and, intercessory prayers. Because we know that there are many, many heroic, good people in our lives, and when books like this basically say heroes don't exist, or heroes in the Middle Ages didn't exist, that is untrue. That is exactly what the communion of saints is. It is the vast collection of heroes of the faith. And in those stories, if there's torture involved, they're not perpetuating it, they're enduring it for the glory of God. Call me biased. A couple of things, I'm just about finishing up here. Like I said, a lot of this chapter isn't particularly focused on what I wanted to talk about here, but there was at least one thing that I wanted to bring up in this video, so please bear with me just a little bit. Yeah, what I said before about conquering the unknown. It says right here that Spock represents rational man succeeding in a predictably rational universe. And once again, I just want to say that's a very Star Trek thing to say. In Star Trek, it is a predictable, rational universe. The real universe, I think predictably rational is ridiculously simple. Tons of this world, tons of parts of this world are not predictably rational. And I'm not talking about paranormal, stuff like ghosts or anything like that. I mean, just the world is not predictable. Weird things happen. History unfolds in ways that we cannot predict. And we are constantly in this battle where sometimes we need to act, and sometimes we have no choice but to react to things that unfolded beyond our awareness. So, again, that's a little nitpick. I don't believe we're living in a predictably rational universe. I believe we're living in a mostly predictable, rational universe, but with plenty of room on the margins for surprises. All right. Yeah, a little more stories about the set. Yeah. So you know what? I think I'll wrap up this video series with one final direct quote from Gene Roddenberry. So I'm wrapping up on page 172 in case that matters. Gene Roddenberry told us, "Art is really about asking the eternal question, what is it all about?" What is it all about? I think that's a great question. I agree that is what art is meant to be. Not just visual art, but books, movies, TV, music. In one way or another, they should be inspiring us to question how we're supposed to be living our lives and what it's all about. And I think that's where the reality, the undeniable reality of daily life, intersects with fiction. We need both in our lives. We need to know the world as it currently exists, but we also need the vision to imagine how the world might be if we can bring it one step closer to the ideal. I think that's a great attitude for art, and how art actually does fuel our souls. And, I find that exciting. And I think ultimately that's why I consider myself a priest who is completely and totally unashamed of my love for fiction and science fiction and fantasy and all of that. I don't see the conflict in loving that and the richness, of the faith. I have a bunch of priests, in my life that say, no, Justin, you got to pick one or the other. You cannot serve God and mammon, as they say. That's coming up this weekend. But if I was having that debate, I would respectfully argue that fiction and entertainment, things that actually do inspire our souls, I would actually argue that even though it's not the Bible or sacred scripture, it is not actually the territory of mammon, because anything that is made with human hands that is somehow able to bring us closer to heaven, closer to the divine reality of God and all that good stuff, if it is something that is bringing us closer to the Lord, then there is at least some goodness in that, and there is something worth celebrating and protecting. You cannot serve both God and mammon, and it's true. There is a lot in this world that we should reject because it's just bad for us. And there is some fiction out there that is absolutely worthless. It will just corrupt our souls. It will corrupt our sense of optimism and joy for being alive. We should definitely stay away from that stuff. But anything that makes us better people, anything that helps us to grow in our appreciation for the world and being alive and everything humanity has accomplished, and the fact that God loves us and that the world is good, like all of that stuff, that is to be celebrated, that is to be protected. And I, for one, in spite of all the nitpicks I can make against Star Trek, for all of the ways I disagreed completely with Gene Roddenberry's philosophy, hey, we weren't twins, whatever, I very much consider true Star Trek to be in that category of art that ultimately makes us better people. And in that way, it has my deep respect. So thank you for watching these videos. I certainly hope that that either I taught you something, or at least I got you to ask a couple of decent questions for yourself. I don't know what my next series of videos will be on this apologist channel, but it won't be long, I'm sure. God bless you all.